Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto. Today I'm sitting down with Kurt Braget, who is the founder of Chirp, as well as, I think, the founder of Dmail and numerous other applications, and Popstand as well. So you've got a pretty long list, and I do want to break that down a little bit. But I kind of caught you on Twitter, Kurt, and that's when I really became interested in the person that is Kurt. So we're going to talk a little bit about you and some of your experiences. Who is Kurt? Like, where did you come from? How'd you get into blockchain? How did this whole thing kind of start with you?
Yeah, so the blockchain story probably starts with I was interested in programming.
Yeah.
And I got into the startup scene in LA from being kind of an engineer in some corporate stuff. Like I worked on some pretty big projects. Like I worked with T-Mobile and, just like the typical kind of corporate setup, because I think at that point in time, I was really just trying to climb the ladder, like, and survive really, because I have a background in arts and being an athlete. And so when I got into programming, I was like, wow, like I can do something that kind of feels like art, but like I won't be starving every month now, and I'll be making money. And then like I quickly climbed pretty quickly in being an engineer in corporate, and got to the point where I was like, wow, what's next for me? And then I decided that I wanted to kind of lock in on mobile, emerging mobile, because I was like right around after the iPhone came out, and I was just like, this is probably going to be the way the world is with these apps on these mobile phones that seemed very new. Yeah. And so I just went full force into learning about mobile applications. And so then I kind of ended up in LA and started working with, I got really lucky actually to meet some guys at Amplify, this accelerator that was just crushing it, and met the founders and just like became friends with them and started working with them, kind of floating around as a CTO on different projects, until finally a project called How Much, which was originally called Dare Me To. It was a fiat-based micro funding on videos that are kind of like TikTok videos. This is 2011, 2012. And the guy who funded us was Tim Draper. And so I was like, who's this guy? Because I didn't know him. I never met him. He funded our business. And I was just like, who is this guy, right? I was very curious because he seemed like he was a little bit older, and he seemed really like an innovative dude. And so I just got curious, started browsing through his portfolio, and I found this funny little company called Coinbase. And it was just, I don't know, something happened in my mind at the moment that I found, and this, some people are probably going to think that this isn't like OG enough, because I was inspired by this crypto project that was funded by an investor, but this is really the way that it happened. And I thought about Coinbase, and I saw it, and I was like, man, like this is a funny money bank. Like this is a bank for this hacker money. And I saw it as like an anarchy kind of money. And I was like, well, what is this? It's a bank for Bitcoin. Like what is Bitcoin, and what does it mean? And when I started looking at it and looking deeply into the principles, and I already had an engineering background, so it was pretty quick for me to get it.
Yeah.
I just was fascinated, man. Like it was just one of those things that comes into your mind, and you're like, fuck, man, this is the thing that I need to like draw my attention on. You know what I mean? Like this is strange and exciting, right? And so I just started going crazy, and I'm building this fiat payment system every day. I'm building this like system for microfunding videos all day. It was like Kickstarter for small videos, right? And then I'm like reading about Bitcoin. I'm building this fiat financial system, and it's just like these two things merging together. And I was like, why don't we take all of our money and convert it into Bitcoin and build this motherfucker on Bitcoin, right? Like, let's do Bitcoin microfunding of videos, right? And that was like I just, like, I get crazy on sci-fi and all these concepts. Like, you'll see me nerding out on Twitter a lot about it. But, like, that was my foray into, like, I just really was obsessed immediately, to where I was like, every paycheck I got, it was like, I was trying to buy this shit at $5 or whatever, and I was just like, I was immediately obsessed, dude. It was like I was a Bitcoin maximalist, like from day one. You know what I mean? And that's like how I got into it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's kind of similar. We talked a little bit before this interview. Obviously, it was kind of similar with me. But I mostly came in as a speculator. I was looking at it like, how much money can I make? And then kind of as we talked about like Bitcoin and the whole idea of Bitcoin and like a free financial system leads you down all these like different rabbit holes. So same for me. Sorry, the dogs are going crazy outside there. Yeah.
Here too, so they're probably going to be barking here pretty soon.
It's all good. I guess I talked a little bit about Chirp. I talked a little bit about Popstand. What is Popstand? Like, what kind of came first? Was it Popstand where you were kind of created your own company? How did that come about? What's Popstand all about?
Yeah, so the way that Popstand came about was like I kind of helped a lot of businesses come out of accelerators and new startups to be like a CTO. And then what I realized was like, man, everybody needs a CTO, and it's just kind of like this thing. And it's sort of like I have a different approach. Like I don't believe that a lot of new businesses need a CTO. And so I ended up just kind of being a consultant for a lot of businesses, like helping a lot of businesses and, you know, advising and maybe doing like coming in and helping them like re-architect a product. And I floated around at a lot of businesses as a CTO. And what I realized is like what I really am is like a consultancy, and I should start a business, you know, building products for people. And so I did that. I did that for many years and was building my own products too. And I was running startups, and then it just kind of evolved to a point to where there was more work than I could deal with. And then I met some other guys who were like, I was kind of like going into the product side a lot more, like even though I'm technical and have an engineering background. And then another friend of mine ended up doing the same thing, and I helped him build one of his startups, and then he realized that he was doing more like DevOps and engineering side, and we had just kind of grown too far and started tacking on other people to our operations, and we realized we should merge these businesses together. And this is Chris, my co-founder, who's helped me build a lot of stuff. And so our consultancy is merging. At first it was like 4 or 5 people at first, and now it's around 20 people. And that became Popstand, is like really just our consultancy is like on steroids. And then that kind of merged into being like an MVP factory, and really taking all these principles that we learn about how do you build products, how do you engineer products, how do you build them quickly, how do you build them bug free, how do you build them high quality. And those principles have just been refined over and over through the years now, because we've been in business for years. And that is the kind of process that we built, that we go to build other products. And so I had always wanted to build a software company that its sole purpose is to build its own products. But not everybody in the business is really on board with like going out and spending the rest of your day just hustling hard to like try different products. And so what I do is I'll build a business like Chirp or like Dmail, and I will cut my business into it so that we can do what our business is really great at doing, but I can run it as an entrepreneur. So that's how we're able to achieve what we do with the products that we have now. And so generally I will own a separate business, or we might have an internal product that we build with our process. And so that's kind of the way it is. And we sort of just split the products up based on how much somebody wants to be involved. And that's sort of how it works.
When you were a kid, like I've got to ask this question because I always want to know about like people's origins, because I think it's interesting. Like when you were a kid, did you know that this is where you were going to be? Like when did you catch the bug for like software engineering? And,
There's
like...
no way. Yeah.
Well,
no, dude, like my dad wanted me to be an astronaut. Okay. Yeah. So he did a bunch of astronaut training when I was like a little kid. And my dad was like, he's like a hippie, dude. He's just high all day. And it was just like, he was just like a hippie, man, like a long haired, like dude was getting stoned all day. And, give like these weird hippie books, like how to train your child to like learn about, like they even remember the names of the books. I don't remember the names of them, but he was training me to become an astronaut and learning about astronomy and things like that. And so my childhood was like being raised by my mom, who's really open-minded, and my dad, who's kind of a hippie. and learning about astronomy and science and stuff. Like my dad used to tell me when I was a little kid, you know, someday you'll have a computer in your pocket that you can ask questions and shit like that. My dad isn't like some crazy intellectual, but he's just kind of like, you know, he's kind of a stoner. And I was into Carl Sagan when I was like 7 years old, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of attribute a lot of the more sci-fi stuff maybe to that.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't know anything about computing really. And our family was relatively poor and not very technical. So we didn't have computers. I didn't grow up with a computer. I wasn't interested in computers at all. It was like this nerdy thing that I was an athlete. Like I was in competitive skateboarding like really seriously by the time I was 13. And I played soccer and I played a lot of competitive sports. So my first part was like being an athlete and skateboarding, and I was very much into poetry and writing and literature. I didn't really go to school, so I stopped going to school around 8th grade and just kind of I was touring around skateboarding. That's kind of like my background is in arts and athletics.
Do you think kind of having that type of parenting where he encouraged you to kind of explore and question things had some sort of effect on where you are now? Because I watch a lot of your stuff on Twitter, and you are like you said earlier, you're a sci-fi junkie. I'm always checking out your articles, and I'm always kind of like chuckling with a lot of the stuff that you present. But do you think that had like a really formative effect on who you became? Is that somebody you are today? Curious.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it, man. Like I'm trying to learn a little bit about this stuff. Like I'm reading this book called Range right now that I think is really interesting because it talks about, they call it the Tiger versus Roger method. And so like the way that Tiger Woods was trained to do what he did was in a very specialized way. And then Roger Federer, like he wasn't even interested in tennis at all. And his parents were deeply involved in tennis, but they didn't want to push it on him. So they just said, do whatever you want. And he like so Roger was able to do this whole range of things that he did. He did all kinds of shit. He wasn't like Tiger Woods. It was just like, we're doing this golf thing every fucking day. And what they found statistically is that the Roger method actually works for more people and the Tiger method doesn't. So specializing has all these problems. And so I feel like I've been lucky enough to be exposed to a major range. Like we're talking poetry. I played chess. I've written, like I was an instructor. I was involved in a lot of different things, and I feel very happy for it. And I kind of thank my mom a lot to it because if she saw that I was really into something, she would kind of let me do it. And I wasn't interested in just one thing. I was interested in all kinds of shit. So I'm thankful for that. But why I'm into sci-fi, dude, I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I'm a sci-fi junkie. It didn't really come out. I think I read Philip K. Dick first was like the first thing. I got really obsessed with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was one of the first books that I read in sci-fi. And that just like, I don't know, it was just like holy fuck, like robots and like when and that was I was probably a teenager. I don't know. And then I just was obsessed. I was getting, and I don't know, maybe getting high too. Like, I don't know what it really was. My dad let me get high. Like he was just like, if I wanted to just smoke weed with my dad when I was like, the first time I ever got high, I was like 13. But like, I remember when we always had weed around the house.
Of course.
And so my dad, I think when I was around 17, I like really started getting into weed. Like I would smoke, and I remember I would smoke and then I would lay out these archaeology books on the floor and just sit there and like look, just stare at them while I was high and just like meditate on which book I should read first. And I wasn't in school, so it was like my mind was so free. Like I was free, and I wasn't conditioned in a school. Like I didn't go to high school, basically. I kind of started disconnecting myself from school in maybe 7th grade. Yeah. I would hang out outside. We were ditching school to skateboard, and we weren't connected. We were just totally like we would go into class, but it was like we weren't engaging in any way. And what ended up happening was I feel like that allowed me to get deeply into the stuff that I was really passionate about. Whereas, you know, you're going to school and they're like, here's what you're doing. And you're just on this weird schedule. And I think that not being exposed to that too allowed me to deeply pursue my passions. And now it's like life without that doesn't make sense for me. Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. We have a lot of similarities. I did like a lot of different things in high school too. Like I had a lot of different friends. I was captain of the rugby team and captain of the debate team. I think I'm the only person in the history of my high school to ever like super geeky.
Brain and broad.
Yeah, I know. I just I liked people, and I had friends like from kind of like every sect. So I can relate to that too. And then much like yourself, I kind of fell off like my love for school. I don't think that they do school properly. I think we're kind of like conditioned and we're jammed into these rooms and we're force fed this kind of like narrative that we, by the time we're 16, we should know who we want to be. Like originally I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then it actually went into a corporate lawyer, believe it or not, which is like a pretty far departure from what I do today. But there's all this pressure on you to try to decide. And I think maybe that in your case, having that kind of creative freedom to go out and explore and check things out and really find out what you love. I think like we jam these kids, and really bright kids, they come right out of high school, we jam them into university, and it's like, okay, you got to figure out what you want to be. But do you really know what you want to be when you're like 17, 18 years old? Like you haven't even really experienced the world yet. You haven't.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like this book Range, it talks a lot about that. It basically says, and they're studying all the stats, and it's showing that people who kind of decide later and get exposed to more things, they're doing better, and that they're doing better in life. Like they're finding things that they find. Like it's not like we're gonna be passionate about what we're doing 24/7, but there's some people that are truly miserable, and there's some people that are a little bit happier than others because they're a little bit more connected with how they feel they can bring value in their. And I've worked all of the shitty jobs you could ever work in your life. And like, there's some pros and cons. Like, dude, I worked in a Pizza Hut before. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it's just like miserable the way people treat each other, and like just how low you can get paid. And like, there's all kinds of misery out there for you waiting if you want it. Like, there's plenty to have, and people are out there getting it. And like, some of those people, and they're figuring out with the stats, like some of these people were in these really rigid environments where they were like needing to specialize, and that didn't work out for them. And it's how deep these stats go. Like they were talking about, like there's just this one little thing that I'll cherry pick out of there. They were like, they figured out that like less people would die of heart attacks during this certain period in time, right? And so they're trying to figure out why there's a gap and people are not dying. And so what they figured out was that a lot of the cardiologists were going on vacation during this time, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's really interesting. Like less people are dying because cardiologists are on vacation. Well, why is that? And what they figured out is just that these guys are bozos. They're so specialized in what they're doing is that they're fucking killing people, right? And what they're discovering is that, like, there are all these great insights, and this is like something that's important to me. Like, I'm kind of an information junkie, and I want to find a new insight. I want to see something from another angle. Like, to understand something is to see it from multiple angles at the same time. And those kind of insights often don't come from specialists. And I think that people understand that, like, in their heart, like they're intuitive about their, like, why is this specialist? Why is this financial guru fucking boring me, right? And there's a reason behind it. It's because he's a specialist. And when you become a specialist, you kind of become an idiot, right?
Yeah.
And these cardiologists that are specialists, and that's the thing they know, it's like you start to lose your ability to see it from a different angle, and you start fucking it up. And that's why I just I never really want to be a specialist. I have a certain level of pride in being a generalist, because now you have this insight-rich environment where I could go into astronomy, and now I'm gleaning insights faster because I'm not so deep in,
I love that. That's really well said too. And I never really thought about it like that, but that's pretty accurate. Sorry, there's a massive beetle trying to eat me here. It's Costa Rica problems. Just
I feel
crawling.
like you're out in the jungle over there. Or
I know. I've had people ask me if, because I'll throw up these kind of things in the green screen and they'll ask me like, is that real? I'm like, not quite. I've got a pretty nice view, but it's not that nice. Yeah, that's really interesting. Like if you were to kind of give some maybe like parenting advice or even like an advice to a kid who's like growing up, let's just say you've got somebody who's like just kind of maybe on the tail end of high school, what would that be based on kind of what you said?
Well, the first thing is parenting advice. I don't have kids, so I feel like I have no right to give a parenting advice. But that being said, like giving advice to young people, I believe that we're pretty deep in a matrix where a lot of the things that you're probably being asked to do as a young person are just totally against everything like that you believe in. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a big portion of people. And, like it's not for everybody to do what I did. I just decided one day, I really did. It was like I snapped my fingers and I said, fuck all this. And I remember the day that I left school even. I was just like, I'm never going back there again. Never. And I just made it up in my mind. And I think that other kids might be suffering and they're not going to allow that idea to go in their head. But like, I just decided, man, I have one life. It's this strange gift. Like, I don't believe in gods or things like that. But like, even if you're an atheist, like you have this life, it is like a gift and you only really get one shot. And so why would you go on somebody else's program, dude? That's like crumpling up your life and throwing it in the trash, really. You're just going to go on some other dude's program? Like, whose program is that anyways? Like, who made up this shit where you got to go over here to this place and then be bored all day and then go home and be tired and then, like dude, like, I was reading about, like, look at Billie Eilish, okay? Like, this pop culture thing. It was really interesting because I was reading about she didn't go to high school. Her mom allowed her to just make music all night until 2 a.m. And look at the potential of these young kids, what they can do if they can pursue their passion. And a lot of it is that your parents might not push you in that direction. So it's kind of like on you, bro. Like, I've seen, like, when I used to play chess, I used to play competitive chess. Awesome. I was playing against 12-year-olds that were fucking me up, dude. Like, they were just destroying me, and the level of depth and insight that they had about the game. Like, yeah, they didn't know about girls and they didn't know about, patience in financial markets, but these kids, they knew chess so deeply, and the amount of potential that they have is massive. And I think that we sort of feed this narrative to younger people that, well, you got to wait, or like, when you're adult, what do you want to be when you're an adult? It's like, why the fuck do I have to wait? Like, there are kids that are crushing it and they're 12. It doesn't mean they have to be business gurus, but why can't they just be good at what they want to do now, right? Like gaming. Like, I think that gaming is amazing, and people are trash talking these kids that just want to game all day. And I'm like, wow, if I had a child that was crazy into gaming, it would be the greatest blessing to me ever. You know what I mean? And so I would just, probably the advice, I guess, just kind of wrapping that up, is like, go towards what is really making you feel excited and do it, as long as it, it's not drugs or something like that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's actually it's a really good point, man. I like that, and I subscribe to that as well. Like, I'm a big believer that like, there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of really messed up stuff going on in the world, and governments do not have our best interests at heart. I think there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, and I don't know, like, for sure, but I do suspect that the world is run by, a few people. I don't believe that there is free media, which is something we'll maybe get into with Chirp a little bit, which is one of the reasons why I really like Chirp. But I read Noam Chomsky when I was a kid. I can't remember who handed that to me. And that was probably like one of the most impactful books that I ever read in my life, Manufacturing Consent. Just the fact that
I read that book.
Yeah, it's great, man. Everything that we're fed is just bullshit. It's I think, I can't remember where I read it the other day, but I think that 90% of the media companies in the US I could be misquoting here, are owned by like 6 entities, and each of those entities are kind of tied together. So And there's a lot of censorship going on, like particularly in YouTube. We're seeing a lot of that right now. A lot of people getting censored and in social media. And I think that the world is run by a few people. And I think that needs to change. And for me, blockchain was part of that awakening. So I think you're right. I think kids need to kind of learn to carve their own path. And sometimes mom and dad don't know best, And I think that anybody should be able to do whatever they want to do. I think that their rights end when they start to infringe on somebody else's. But above and beyond that, that's a pretty wide scope. Do what makes you happy.
It's kind of a libertarian principle. That's what it reminds me of. And like, I think that one of the problems is that sometimes these things that we do, they sort of end up getting hijacked by scammers. Like I just recently moved away from the UCLA neighborhood, and it's kind of funny because you can kind of see the whole, like every limb of this beast of this scam. Like you can see every portion of it. Like you see there's a new development, there's a new construction. Well, it's like, well, what's feeding this new residential construction? Well, they're like these higher rents. Well, who's paying the rents? Well, a student in college is paying the rents. Well, where is he getting the money? Well, he's getting the money because there's these loans, right? And then there's a loans. Well, why would someone be compelled to take on all this financial risk? Well, then there's this narrative in school where like you need an education in order to survive in the world. Well, and then where does that start? Well, it starts in the education system where this whole narrative, it's like college, and it's like later you do this, and it's a kind of like this whole thing that goes down to, why are there so many people locked up in this public education system? Well, people that are advocating for teachers and for public education are kind of just, they're the beginning of that conveyor belt of this narrative that sets people on a path to say, yeah, I do want a $300,000 of debt in order to do this. And it's like, you can see every part of that where I was living. It's like this factory of kind of this, that's a narrative that just tells you that this is the way that it should be. And I'm glad I didn't take out any debt. Yeah. Like I didn't care. I thought I'm the best steward of my knowledge, and I am going to be in control of that, not a debt. And what's very interesting is that I think it was even it might have even been Chomsky or somebody who had this great insight. He said, that one of the biggest things that's driving prostitution, for example, is student loan debt. Isn't that very interesting? Isn't that interesting that like you're becoming a prostitute because you've taken on so much debt? I mean, that's fucking ridiculous. Like you're essentially becoming, you're not like there's this whole kind of slave market of people trying to pay off these debts. So they're feeling locked in, very disconnected from their passions, because it's like, how the fuck do I get out of debt? Right. Yep. But it's like, you have almost a concept of a sex slave, this whole slave market of people that are just desperately trying to get out of this debt, and it's really kind of fucked up,
It is. I totally agree with you, man. Yeah, I feel like everybody well, not everybody, but most people that I talk to or that I spend time with who I would consider, and it's not like I would consider interesting, let's put it like that, kind of have this aha moment. And it sounds like you had yours when you were really young. You kind of broke free of that system, or at least you had kind of the recognition within yourself to say, like, this is not right. I don't want to do this, and broke out.
Yeah, skateboarding, man. Like a lot of people will, like, when I first started skateboarding, it was kind of like, yeah, punks do that, but it's very interesting what you do as a skateboarder is that when you walk out of your house when you're a skateboarder, like a handrail or a street or something that these governments build, right? Like you kind of are training your mind to think of like, this is actually a tool for my entertainment, and it's not like like a handrail, for example. Like people look at a handrail and they'll be like, well, I put my hand on it, it keeps me up. And like when you're a skateboarder, you're just like, I just want to fucking shred that handrail and grind down it, and it's a tool for my entertainment. And all of these people in society are kind of looking at you like you don't fit in, and you're kind of it sort of trains you to be like, like being a skateboarder is a way to sort of disconnect yourself from society and think of like the world is my playground,
Yeah.
And it kind of trains you to not be part of that narrative, because that whole, like, you have these police, like the police used to like beat us up and steal our shit. And so you kind of get trained as a skateboarder to be like, you know what? These guys are fucked up. Like, we're just trying to have a good time. And these guys are over here telling us, like, why aren't you in school? Or, you know, it's like you as a skateboarder, you kind of get put against everything. Like, we used to like to skate at banks, right?
Yeah.
And the bankers didn't like that. And so it was like, and those guys hated it the most. But it was, for some reason, like, the architecture and the shit they built was really good for skateboarding.
Of course.
You know? And it's funny because there's this really famous architect from New York. He built Love Park, and he built these structures, and he was like, skateboarders showed me that, like, my architecture was like actually art, and the only appreciating party of my art, because the city was trying to destroy his shit.
Yeah.
The people who really admired his architecture and his art were skateboarders, and he came out in support of the skateboarders, saying that my architecture is being used by these people, not by the people who I built it for, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess it's kind of tying into your, like, who are we as people and why do we see the world the way that we do? And I guess that's probably a bias that I have. And I was kind of lucky in a way to learn that, like, you know, these people kind of running the show, like, it's not about fun. It's kind of about, like, this certain kind of system that you have, you know, like, I don't share the same view that maybe the world is run by a few people. I think that it's kind of like, I do from a different perspective. Like, I think it's natural that, like, people end up gaining leverage.
Yep.
And it just happens. And, like, the people who are attaining power, they have, like, zero incentives almost to be like, no, like, why would I want this more money or power? It's kind of like, that's the way our system is built. So, like, like my way of looking at it is not so much that they're evil people that are, like, power. Like, I think they're power hungry in a way, but it's sort of like, when it keeps getting handed to you, like, you have no real, you don't really have any reason to say no to it in a way, right?
Absolutely.
But back to your thing about media, like, we could, you know, transfer into, like, I think that it sucks for media, and I do have a lot of beliefs about why media could be decentralized or maybe more free and freedom of speech, like YouTube and crypto is terrible. And that's part of the reason why I thought, you know, maybe we should build something that is an alternative, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things that I could say, but I don't want to bore people to death. But we share a lot of the same views. I just think that it's cool that you probably attained kind of this, just the ability to be able to look outside of yourself at a younger age than most people did, which has kind of formulated who you've become. So it's really cool to hear about kind of some of those experiences as well. I want to talk about Chirp because I love Chirp, and I actually really like links. When I tried out the chain, we'll get into that. I wanted to just maybe go in chronological order. I want to talk about Dmail. Like, what is Dmail, and what inspired you to build Dmail?
So the thing that inspired me to build Dmail was there were, like, a lot of these sort of, like, crypto prophets that are out there, right?
Yeah.
They're like these apostles of blockchains, and they're talking about, you know, we're going to rebuild the internet under this new paradigm of, you know, this group of services or group of technologies like blockchain and cryptography and, you know, cryptocurrencies. And at first I was like, maybe, I don't know, like, that sounds great, but I doubt it, right?
Yeah, of course.
But then when it started to really kind of set in, I started thinking, like, well, let's just imagine that this blockchain ecosystem and all these group of technologies are a new internet, right? And I thought, well, what do internets have at their core? Like, they have these protocols, which, like, you know, and I just started thinking about the history of the internet, and email is a big part of the internet's history. It's probably the most used. It's the killer app of the internet. It is like everything you can't build a Facebook or these other things without email. And it's like the air that we breathe on the internet. And I also fucking hate email too. Like, I think it's stupid. Like, I don't like to hop in my email. Like, somebody described email to me in a very elegant way, like the best description I've ever heard of email. And like, I'm sensitive to productivity stuff and people controlling me, right? And they said that email is a task list where somebody else adds tasks to your day. And it's like, it's kind of true. Like, I didn't ask for that fucking email. Now all of a sudden that email is in my inbox and I got to do something about it. That sucks. You controlled my productivity. You put a task in my inbox, bro. That sucks. Right? So email totally sucks. I hate it. Like, it's the worst. It's the worst thing ever, but it's also the best thing ever, right? Yeah. Like, that's how intros are made. And, you know, you can't really, like, email is the glue of the internet. Like, it really is. It's just everything is glued together. And then I started researching the history of it and how beautiful it is. There's all these informal protocols that came about and people battling with each other about who's going to be in control of these protocols, and, you know, POP and the SMTP, and, you know, it was really a beautiful thing. Like, just the ability to be able to message people through these terminals was like groundbreaking at the time. Yeah. It was like, wow, like I can hop into this terminal and then like Joe's over there, and like rather than just like fucking with a file by myself, like I could get something over to Joe. Like, wow, like that's amazing, right? And we forget about it because we're born into it now, essentially, really. And so, but then I realized, okay, well, if there is this new blockchain, this blockchain is lacking email. It's plain and simple. There is no fucking way that I can take an address that's built on a blockchain, right? We have these hashes, and then EOS has like these human readable names. Like, there is no email for that. And so, like, if Joe, or if some address at some long ass Ethereum address wants to send a communication over to another one, they don't have any way to do it. So let's imagine a scenario like, I'm getting ready to send $20,000 into a smart contract, so I want to invest in something, right? Yep. Well, it would be great to have a communication with the person that I know is the owner of that address, and that is kind of what email does. When I send a message into that address, that person is pretty sure that came from me, the owner of that wallet address, because I actually had to sign that email and Dmail with a token with that key of that wallet. And so now that person who's received that message, if they trust our service and if they understand how it works, they'll know that Joe from that long ass hash is actually speaking to me. And now me, Joe, the person who's about to send 20,000 of my hard-earned dollars into, or ETH or whatever, into that address. And all this works on EOS, right? I'm just using ETH as an example. But now I can be sure that person who owns that smart contract or whatever that wallet address is communicating with me. And also, when I send that money into that address, I can get a communication. You just sent me $20,000. Here's some information about the investment that you made, and it's coming from that party. There's no other thing that does this, and it's so fucking crucial. And it's so mind-blowing what a technology like this is going to be in the future, because it's like financial receipts, communications that are associated with transactions is what Dmail is about. And it's one of the biggest ideas I've ever had. And so you use a token to sign those messages, and that's how you kind of reduce the spam. And it goes back to even pre-cryptocurrency, where you have technologies, like people have proposed this even on fax messages, using cryptography to, you know, or proof of work even was proposed for sending messages at one point in time. And I think it's too much, but just being able to sign with the private key with the token is really the way that Dmail works.
That's really cool, man. I never really thought about it the way that you just kind of illustrated it. And it's like a trustless system. You know, it's coming from X party to you. I mean, think about like phishing and all the weird stuff that happens with email these days. So it really kind of uses like the whole, you know, what blockchain's all about: transparency, auditability. That's incredible, man. That's a really cool story. I appreciate you sharing that with me. What was the hardest part about building that thing? Was there like, what were kind of some of the headaches? Was there any like anything you encountered where you just want to rip your hair out?
Yeah, dude. Like I know that there's a long way to go. Like for example, storing the messages
Yeah.
and encrypting the messages. Like, ideally, we would have stored it encrypted on the blockchain, and like the way that blockchains store data, I still think is just has a long way to go. Like, I know that there's dstore, and there's another proposal by Dan Larimer, and a lot of things that are coming out for how do you store messages that don't really belong on the blockchain, because the blockchain is not the greatest place to retrieve and store large amounts of data like a video. Like, you wouldn't want that there. And so I knew that this was going to be a controversial piece, and I've decided to store them in kind of like a traditional centralized data store. And they are encrypted, and they still work with your keys. But that was a challenging thing, and also coming, like, inventing this thing took me a while, because the way that the mail token works is that it works like a stamp does in the post office, but it makes the stamp reusable. So if I send a message over to you and you receive it, now you have one stamp now. So you can it's kind of like you received a letter and you could peel the stamp off and put it on another one and send it to somebody else. And so that was a unique invention that I created. And I think that took me a lot of time to really think of, and it's very unique. And I think that it's probably the best invention for a blockchain and how to send messages from point A to point B. It actually kind of reuses the idea of stamps, and stamps worked for a long time, by the way, and they go back to thousands of years of wax stamps, as you know. And so what I created is like another iteration of the wax stamp, the postage stamp, and that was kind of challenging. So yeah,
it's really cool. I really understand, based on kind of your explanation there, how important that is. And it seems like something that would kind of seem relatively simple, but I think kind of building something for Internet 3.0, you had it in your head, you thought about, you kind of reverse engineered it from like, what product would everybody use on Internet 3.0? And you kind of went to email, and then you kind of like, that's really cool. It's a really cool thought process.
Yeah,
I like it. I want to just touch on something, and it's kind of funny because I think we have like a lot of the same opinions on this. And you're talking about people fighting over different like email protocols and stuff like that. I think like, I've got something, I know now, like one of your favorite terms is maxi. And you were saying, because it's kind of like maxi pad. And we've got like, that's really what we're doing right now. Because like, I guess like, it's like, I'm fine with being called I guess we are all kind of like blockchain nerds, we're all into these like different protocols that are coming up. And people get like so passionate and like aggressive and sometimes like rude about like, my protocol is like, I love EOS.io, right? Like I always have. I came into EOS, like mainnet, like I like B1. I respect what they did. Fan of Brendan and Dan and whatever else. But some of these people in these like different projects and these like different chains, you know what I mean? Like they beat the crap out of each other. I know because of course you're building on links. You faced a lot of that.
Yeah.
What's kind of your opinion on blockchain maximalism? How has that affected you? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's almost like it reminds me of being into other things. Like, have you ever seen a guy who's like real tatted up from like, and he started getting tattoos like 20, 30 years ago? And like, you meet him and it's like, it almost reminds, like, being a maximalist is kind of like you might forget that you were really into something if you didn't have tattoos sometimes. And like, there was this guy, actually, his name is Salman Aga, all right? Yeah. And he was like a really popular skateboarder back in the day. And he even had his own Vans shoe for a while.
Nice.
And his whole body is tattooed. And he said this thing to me, and this is like tying into maximalism, by the way. Like, it's not.
Yeah, for sure. Go.
But he's like, always be proud of your tattoos. And I realized like, there's something deeper about what he was saying, because this guy's fucking deep, actually. Like, some skateboarders were actually end up being very deep guys.
Yeah.
And what it really means is that don't forget that at one point in time, you were really partial to a view that you no longer hold, and you need to kind of wear that on your body like a scar. And I think at one point in time, I was a Bitcoin maximalist, and we've all been into things that maybe we would have liked to forget or even have forgot. And at one point in time, I thought that, like Litecoin, like, who the fuck needs that? Like, why do we need this thing? Like, that just sounds like a scam. It's like a ripoff, because I've gone through the whole gamut
of
of
course.
different crypto stuff. And so I think that if we kind of fast forward to EOSIO and chains, and like, dude, I've said stuff that I regret, and I've stirred the pot a bunch of times. So I'm not going to try to act like I'm coming from some place of like, I'm the example of how you should be. Like, I've said some things that are, maybe I deleted later. But my view now and where I've come now is that EOSIO is a great technology. Block One did a really good job. So people that are hating on Block One, like, oh, you guys are a fucking scam and go to jail or whatever, it's like, you can't really ignore that EOSIO itself is a great technology that's being used to drive Wax and Warbly and, Links Chain and, Telos. Like that is like, just in a year to be driving these full markets that, there's some debatable activities going on each one of them, but the fact that it's been forked so many times and people are so, like, the fact that there are these tribes being grown around, like, even if, like, I even joke about it a lot. Like, if you go in the Chirp Telegram, you'll see that, like, I'll compare people that are tribal about a specific thing to, like, like voodoo cultures or like virgin sacrifices and blood drinking. Like, it reminds me kind of these things that happen throughout the past. Like, these people, it's kind of like a repeated human nature of, if I'm not in it so deeply, then like it's not interesting for us or something. It's like we really love to get behind this stuff, but my view now is that EOSIO, there's all of these great things. Like, I'm a supporter of Block One. At the end of the day, like, I have a little bit of all the maximalism inside of me, and I do like Block One. I want there to be a Block One in the world as opposed to not having one. And Brendan, I think the guy's a cool guy. Like, I don't have any, like, I have my criticism, obviously. Dan is like one of my idols in a way. Like, why would I ever, like, I would never be like, Dan is, fucked up or something. Like, that's not, you probably won't see that come from me. And I think that the maximalists are it's become toxic now, because in EOS it's become toxic because at first it seemed right to be really supportive of mainnet and to be really, because there might have been this China chain when we first launched mainnet.
Remember.
And all of these great friendships and everything. And being a mainnet kind of maximalist felt right at that time. But now that you have these other chains and people that are like, look, we need alternatives, it feels wrong to be too much of a maximalist now. And we can evolve. Like, I love to be able to wake up tomorrow, have a new insight, and be like, this is how I feel about that thing now. Fucking deal with it, because I did change my view. That's okay. Like, that's evolution, right? Yep.
I agree with you. I think the maximalism is like, I mean, it's natural just because that's kind of the way we're pre-programmed. But like, I like mainnet. Like, I obviously, like, I'm a little bit, I worked on the Warbly project a little bit. So obviously I like Warbly. Like, I like Links. I love EOS. I like
Warbly was an early one, right? So you kind of got exposed to, wow, how dare you go to this side chain? Like, so you got it early, because Warbly is an early one, right?
Yeah. But it's like, it doesn't matter, man. Like, I mean, I think I see each of these as just kind of like, it's a new little ecosystem. Like, I think Dan described it in one of his things, like different kingdoms, right? Like, with kind of different abilities and different experiments going on. And I just like, I think that it's cool. I think that like in a bunch of, I think that we're going to see a lot of blockchain applications use like multiple blockchains. They might use Ethereum for this if they need something like really strong for immutability. And then, maybe they use, they log into Links because they like the easy user experience. Maybe they pull something like financial from Warbly, and then they link into EOS, and maybe they need some governance, so they go over to Telos, right? I just don't think, like, I think it's just a total waste of time for us to be like killing each other. But it's like you still got to have an opinion too, like, and you still got to, you know, like, you still got to like be you, and you can talk about things. I think that's where I think it's fine to have an opinion. I think like when people start getting personal, that's where it starts to get a little bit silly. You know, we're just a bunch of like early blockchain nerds arguing over whose protocol is better. And I think that there's values. I hope that there's like 150 chains in like 2 years of EOS.io, each like doing different things, innovating. And I think there will come a time even where like we'll lose a lot of that maximalism, and we'll see like different chains working together and having these like pre-described relationships where they're like pulling in client A and they're like, yeah, I really recommend these guys for this. And we're going to, you know, I just think that we're going to see a lot of kind of more complex blockchain applications that are going to start making use of more than one database, because that's really what it is at the end of the day. And I think, man, like, it's cool. Like I've said stuff too, and I've like acted in certain ways, but at the end of the day, like I you know, just because I don't understand something, it doesn't mean that it's not valid. And we have all these different communities, but it can be pretty toxic sometimes. And it can be like, you know, but you should still be able to argue and talk about things and have discussions without like people getting super personal about it. I just noticed like some people get insanely like personal. And I guess that's kind of like something that the anonymity of the internet allows. It's just like people to come in, they had a bad day. So instead of, they don't go kick their dog, they come to the internet and start yelling at people. So it's like, it is what it is. It's always going to happen. But I think that in time, like, that'll start to shift a little bit. I want to talk to you actually about links. I want to talk to you about Chirp. So like, I'd heard about links for a while and I was like, whatever, like, you know. And then finally the other day I went through it and I was really impressed because like, God bless Scatter, those guys are amazing. You know, they kept us alive. They're the first people to create something so that we could actually use the chain. But I was really getting worried, like, who's going to use this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, if I have to go and I have to get like a personal key and I have to go over here and I have to like log this and then I have to like set up Scatter and I have to do this just to be able to use a block, like, who's going to use this? And I saw links and I was like, yes, like, this makes sense to me, because I literally went to the website, downloaded it, bang, bang, boom, had it on my desktop. I'm up, I'm like using links, I'm blasting aliens in Iceland, and I'm like having a good time. Like, you know what I mean? I honestly will say like I like different blockchains, like, but I probably use, and this isn't just like a shill because I'm talking to you because you built something on links. I probably use links. Like, I've got the blockchain data to show like more than any other blockchain right now. And I was really impressed with the user experience. And then I caught Chirp and I was like, this is fantastic. And I saw somebody else the other day, like, who's kind of like threw out a criticism, like, Chirp is just a Twitter alternative. And I'm like, thank God. Like, it does look like Twitter. It does feel like Twitter, but like, I can get rewarded for like, for posting stuff. You know what I mean? And like, I can actually, it's like Twitter, but I can actually like promote content and I can tip people and I can interact with people and I can exchange value. And I think that that's one thing that blockchain is going to be really successful at. And I don't think you have to have like ones. I don't know if you knew this, but when Tribe 1 came out, I was a COO on Tribe. So I've like worked on some of these like social media rewards applications as well. And I feel really strongly that they're the way of the future. And I feel really strongly that there's the potential for a lot of them. But I gravitated towards Chirp because of the user experience and because it was similar to Twitter, but it allowed people to kind of incentivize and reward each other. Where did you come up with that idea? Can you kind of give me the backstory and talk a little bit about your motivations behind Chirp?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the long backstory of like blockchain and crypto and just being involved and being part of a lot of projects that were really great. Like, I remember I was part of a project in 2013 called, and I named the project and I joined a company, Afty, that was building some chat-based applications. And I was just like, man, this needs to be a Bitcoin chat. So I came up with this idea of TalkChain. And it was a pretty popular app. It was a Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was like the only thing that was really happening at the time. Yeah. And there were kind of like communities that were chats that, you know, were about Bitcoin. And there was no crypto integration, but we always kind of thought there should be. And that's now kind of changed into Geek Chat, because I feel like they just weren't, like, crypto was just like really too forward thinking at that time. And they just wanted to make it for geeks only. So they changed it and it's still thriving. It's called Geek Chat.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of little things that I've been involved with, like, you know, even building Dmail parlayed into this pretty well, because I realized, like, in order for people to really use a lot of email, there has to be a lot of services built on the internet, because email is sort of like a glue. So if you don't have things to glue together, then there's just Elmer's glue on the table waiting for the fucking the construction paper to come out. And so I started thinking, you know, I spent so much time doing that, and it gave me this insight of like, you know, blockchains and chains are like baby internets. And what did the baby internet have? It's the same thing as Dmail in a way, really. And it was like, well, they have these message boards, right? And so, and I wasn't even part of the early internet, but I've just been a super nerd about like learning about it and learning about like going back in time and saying like, wow, like these Microsoft commercials like from the 90s are insane. You know, these people talking about the internet before it was a thing are insane when you watch them, you know. Jesus.
It's okay.
So,
I got my dogs going here. It's all good.
Yeah, there's like a lot of Harley Davidson action going on around here because I'm in like, you know, where I grew up. There's like, yeah. So anyways, it was like, well, there's these people, they're real crazy advocates for a chain and they want to connect with each other. And it's like I've even said that crypto is the best thing for my social life. Like, I was calling it initial friend offering, right? And because like I'm meeting all these people, like I met you, and it's amazing. And we realized like I would meet these crypto guys and then realize like they have a background in skateboarding too. They're kind of punks. They're into punk music. They were into this or that. Like there's something that kind of binds us all together. And on a baby internet, you need a kind of like a water cooler area for people to kind of say, hi, I'm here. I support this chain and I can connect with other people. And so Chirp, and I knew that there was a plan of voice, and I was like, wow, that's going to take forever. And there's going to be all this fancy schmancy shit involved. Like, I want this shit now, and I'm going to roll my own. And I don't care. Like, I'm not a competitor to voice. I don't have any gripes with Block One. Like a lot of people, they sort of assume that I built it because I want to compete and I'm trolling Block One. It's like, no, it's like if I make my own mining rig in my house, it doesn't mean I hate Bitmain. Like I like to roll my own. I like to make my own shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man.
So that's kind of the idea. And the reason why I went to Link's chain was because I really like what Fred has done. I like his past, and you know, some people find him abrasive or whatever, but like I've met the guy in person. I hang out with the guy in person. I know him. I know that he's a hustler, man. And I just feel like another thing I saw with these other chains is that they're trying to do all this decentralized stuff, and it's just it's like, okay, cool, like that's gonna pan out in 10 years or whatever. I don't know, but like I want it now. And I kind of have this theory that like a real leader that's leading something, even if they have to cut corners, so what? Yeah, it's not the most decentralized. It's not a decentralized masterpiece, okay? Like, but if there's leadership and there's people that I can back, and it's still using EOS.io, which it is. Link's chain is EOS.io. It's not like it's not that different, right? Like we have block producers, and you know, it's not. If someone's going to come in and be like, that's not decentralized enough for me, but like I'm using EOS.io, I'm power using it. We're creating accounts easily. Like we're power using the fuck out of EOS.io and cutting a few corners, right?
Yep.
And I believed, and I took the risk in backing these guys that have a great background in entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
And they're hustlers, and I want to, and if I'm going to build a product and attach it to a chain, like I want to attach it to the back of the rocket ship. And I feel like this could be one. And look at what's happened even just in a 2-month period. It's barely even launched, and now it's merged with Metal. There's all these financial services. They'll probably be all over exchanges. Like this is something that none of the other chains have been able to do, and they've done it in 2 months. So it's kind of like, at first I was kind of sweating. Like people are like, yeah, fuck you, you know. Close and centralized and fuck Fred, and like I felt that. Like that hurt my feelings. But like
I've been there.
Panning out pretty well at this point though now. Like they're hustling. They're out there winning. And that's why I did it. And now I don't really feel that bad about it. I feel like all the risk I've taken is already at this point justified. Totally happy with the way things are going. And that's kind of like a backstory of Chirp. And I think that, you know, it could be a refuge for people that are like, you know what, Steam just got taken over by some bozos, you know? Yeah. So, well, I don't want to fuck with that. And people might be more willing to put in their trust into Chirp. Like we probably won't censor. Like I have my principles that I believe in. Like I believe in starting by cutting corners and then, you know, going into this decentralization, because otherwise you're in a fantasy land. Look at these people in Steam. They've been building that network and preaching the gospel of decentralization for 4 years, only to figure out that once, you know, Mr. Big rolls up into his Cadillac and wants to take it over, he can do it in a day. You know, that's not decentralization, right?
Yeah, I feel for them. And I've also, of course, like Warbly is probably the most centralized of all the EOS.io chains. So like I get it, but decentralization is a tool. It's a tool to accomplish a goal. You know what I mean? And depending on what that might be, you know, I think starting out centralized makes the most sense, because with the decentralized, I love decentralization. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know what I mean? And yeah, like I know it's KYC, like AML, like, but I also love like decentralized, like kind of like gray black market applications that are pushing the boundaries and keeping the government on their toes.
Yeah, like Silk Road, like, you know, it's a good example. And those guys are like pioneers in a way. And like, here's the thing is like a lot of people might, like, I have people hopping in my Twitter. Like I get a lot of shit. Like it doesn't really bother me, to be honest. Like I've dealt with way worse shit, dude, from where I came from. But like, you know, having some dude who like assaults me or, you know, talk some shit on Twitter, like, dude, it doesn't bother me that much. But they might not know, because they're making a lot of assumptions like, oh, you love permission chains. Like, well, I don't know if I love them. Like, actually, if I had my absolute perfect app, like if Chirp could be every, like the genie in the bottle gave me my 3 wishes, like what it would be is totally immortal. Like you cannot stop this fucking thing. If you drop nuclear bombs on the whole world, like it still exists in space. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like anybody can put whatever the fuck they want onto this thing, and nobody can stop anybody, anything. I don't care what it is. Like the Taliban want to put shit on it. Like, like, you know, like I really believe that we have evolved enough as a society to have an immortal chain with immortal applications that you can never fuck with. And they're totally decentralized, completely free market. Like there is no rules at all whatsoever. You want to sell cocaine? Go ahead. Like, even, you know, like I don't want to like get myself in trouble, but it's like, that is the future. A fully immortal, decentralized social media is where I want things to go, and I think we're just about ready for it. And that is my dream. But if I did that tomorrow, guess where I'm at? I'm fucking bunkmates with Ross Ulbricht. That's where I'm going to be. And so why do we have to wait for society to become enlightened or whatever in order to have it? Like when we can have, like, just having the payment layer for Chirp, for example, be on a chain, and for people to be in control. Like I own my money. I transfer money to you through Chirp. Like that is an achievement that we can have today. And we don't have to worry about the FBI knocking on our door, right? And that's better than Twitter, in my opinion. So we can have that today, and we can ease into the rest of the stuff that is dangerous. Like, in my opinion, EOS mainnet is suffering from the fact that it is so open. Like, IDOS can cruise onto there and just fuck the whole scene up because there's that freedom. And I commend them. Great, there's freedom. It's a fully open system, but that's why it's also fucked up too, right?
Yep. Yeah, decentralization, centralization both have their advantages. I'm a fan of decentralization. Like I get it, but I also share a lot of the same views. And in terms of like people, the whole competitive, like you versus like I'm still like I built, you know, when we were building Tribe, we got a lot of the same thing. Like, you know, B1 is coming, and I just thought, like, I don't buy pizza at one store every time. You know what I mean? Like there's so much pie. We're so early, and there's room for a lot of different, you know, social media, blockchain applications. Like, why does there only have to be one? Like, it's so early. And
why
like,
can't I be excited? I feel like people expect me because I built Chirp. Like, dude, I'm excited about voice. I want to use it. Yeah, I love KYC, but like, dude, like I'm gonna use it. I'm bummed that they rejected my application. You know what I mean? And I'm supportive of Block One. But I'm also going to ask the questions that I want to ask, because nobody's paying me not to, really. Like, a lot of people, they have their, like, they either have bags or they have some kind of bias, and like I have my own biases, but I think it's totally okay for me to support Brendan and Dan, and to actually like Block One, and to have a lot of admiration for EOSIO. Dude, we're building on EOSIO. How can we, like, that's hypocritical. We can't be like, fuck Block One. Like, but you could say fuck Block One, but still like EOSIO software, because you could be like, fuck Block One's lawyers who are, doing something wrong or whatever. Like, I can hold whatever views I want, and I feel very free to do it. I can use voice and enjoy it if I want to, and that's okay. Like, a lot of people are just assuming that, like, it's like David and Goliath. Like, I have to smash. Like, they could just crush me in a second if they want to, or they could buy me. Like, there's so many possibilities, and this is fun for me. I'm doing it because it's fun. Like, I can't go and control the product at Voice. I can't do it. That would be fun for me too, but I can with my own shit, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's a really, and I saw a lot of the same things working on Tribe and building Tribe and kind of being one of the.
I love Tribe, by the way. I've been talking to those guys.
Yeah, they're super cool. I'm still really good friends with Tom, but I actually ended up leaving my position there to work on Warbly, and now I'm just kind of doing a lot of freelance stuff. But it was cool. I guess just like everybody's so like, there's, like I always say, man, there's so much pie out there, and everybody's like if you had this huge pizza and you're like you got this wheelbarrow, and you're trying to like scoop up enough pizza for your family, like if it's a massive pizza the size of a football field, you don't have to go over there and knock over his wheelbarrow. Like, there's pizza. We're rebuilding the internet. There's going to be a lot of different applications. There's going to be a lot of different things. And for me, the more kind of reward-based blockchain applications, the more opportunity people have to monetize their stuff. You know what I mean? The more opportunity people have to kind of engage with it. So I honestly would love, I would love to see like a ton of different blockchain social media. And I haven't seen anything that replicates Chirp. Me too. I'm excited about Voice. Like, I like Block One. Like, I like EOSIO, period. I mean, I like all of blockchain, but so I get it. You're preaching to the choir. And
and we're all like friends. Like, like somebody who's like, I think that one thing we forget because we're so locked into our silo is that, like, a lot of people, they see another person on another EOSIO chain as like their enemy, right? And I guess I kind of get it, because maybe that person technically could steal their lunch in some way, and that's why we compete with each other in a way, because we're kind of fighting over resources, I think, essentially. But like, how many other pieces of shit in the world can I dislike way more than a guy who's really into Telos? Like, that guy on Telos is my bro, actually. He's into EOSIO software, he's into crypto. He has all these things that make him my bro or sis, way more than like some dude who's at a bank that is like trying to give crypto a bad name. Like, that's the enemy, not the guy right next to me.
No, it's crazy, man. And we're only stealing each other's lunch because we're thinking small. Like, how many people are really into blockchain in the world? How many people should be into blockchain in the world? And how many people are we going to be able to enable using kind of like nice, easy interfaces where people don't even know they're using the blockchain? Like, there's this big market, and we're in on this like little corner of this pie. You know what I mean? And it's ludicrous to me. Like, I like Telos too. Like, honestly, like, for decentralized governance, like, I get it. I understand. There isn't a chain out there that I'm like, yeah, fuck that chain. Like, there's, I just think that like people can be a little bit, and it's easy to do because, like you say, you're in your silo. But I think that there's like a use for everything, and everybody's going to kind of do their thing, and we don't have to compete because we haven't even started to scratch the surface of what's available to us and bringing people into the system. So
and EOSIO kind of reminds me of like, I've likened it a lot to Linux, and I haven't seen, like, I think nobody really cares, one, that I'm comparing it to Linux, but I haven't seen very many great arguments kind of against it. And when I was very enthusiastic about Linux, it kind of reminded me of that, because you have SUSE, and you have, like, if I wanted to do hacking, I would go hop into a backtrack kind of distribution, and there's these different distros, but at the end of the day, they are all kind of running on the Linux kernel, and it's all this and like, people who are Linux enthusiasts, they are kind of like more willing to work with each other. And then you have like Ubuntu and all these different things, and like, they have their purposes, and that's kind of my insight for now, that like they're more similar than they are different. And also I believe that they all bring benefit and pay respect, whether they say it or not, back to EOS.io and the core, which is mainnet. Like most people recognize EOS as an asset. Like, does it make EOS as an asset any less valuable because Telos is doing good? I don't think so. I think that actually Telos doing good feeds back into the testament that this is a useful technology, right?
Yep.
And so I think that even if you're building a chain, and you might be talking some shit, but like I think the shit talking is more like mutual respect between two soccer teams that are fighting against each other. They got respect, but it's like, bro, I'm gonna smash you, but I love what you're doing and I respect, right? And so like to me, there's a difference. You know what I mean? Like like the other day I was arguing with somebody on Twitter, and I was like what's his name? That boxer, that fighter at UFC that is really famous. I forget his fucking name.
Which one? I'm a big like martial arts guy.
The Irishman. He's
Conor McGregor.
McGregor. Okay.
Yeah.
I love this guy. Okay. Like I'm not really big into fighting. Like I kind of was when I was younger, but like this guy, he's just trash talking, dude, and it just makes UFC so valuable. The trash talk, people love it. It's because like it's like Babe Ruth calling his shots. Like it's like, bro, I'm gonna smash you. You're fucking weak. You know what I mean? But I have respect, and that's what it is. It's like I see it as friendly competition. And nobody would ever say, you know what, fuck Conor McGregor because he's a trash talker. Everybody's like, this guy is a major value add to the ecosystem. He's not out there trying to say like, I'm gonna kill your family and I'm gonna like, you know, do something really bad. He's just like, you know what, bro, like you got a week left and I'm gonna fucking crush you. And that's kind of the way that I see some of this trash talking. It's respectful, but that it's competitive, and competition is good and admirable. It's what we need. And no one will ever say, you know what, I'm not going to watch Conor McGregor because I really don't like the way he talks trash. They love it secretly, you know. So
yeah, they do actually. They do. Like I'm kind of a politician, but I mean, I see a lot of interesting talk. I think that, like you said, as long as everything is kind of kept respectful, I just think that there is a lot of pie out there, and I think we're going to see a pivot at some point when people start realizing how much pie is out there, and we start seeing more like multi-chain applications. People will start kind of like working together a little bit more and stuff. But in the meantime, it's been pretty interesting. It's been fun. So, Kurt, I don't want to keep you too much longer because I promised I'd let you go around probably 5 minutes ago, man. But
no, dude, it's been fun, and I appreciate you reaching out, and I always love to have these kind of chats, man. So anytime, like this is fun for me. So
it's been really insightful for me because I've got to see who you are behind the scenes, and you're like a humble, intelligent, you know, guy who's obviously got some interesting opinions, but you're really easy to talk to. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, like, you know, it's cool to be able to sit down with people behind the scenes, and I hope that people who are looking in at this get to understand how cool of a person that you really are, because I do think that you're cool.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah,
I love what you're doing with Chirp, man. I honestly do use links all the time. Like, say whatever you want. It's probably my most used blockchain right now. I like Dmail. That was a cool story. I'm going to throw links to absolutely everything below in the story, and I'm going to keep using Chirp. I really recommend people go and check that out because it is Twitter, but instead of, you know, just kind of posting things, you can kind of get rewarded. You can interact with people. You can send people money. It's interesting. I love what you're doing, man, and it was really a pleasure to sit down with you today, and I hope that we get to do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, likewise, dude. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye.